My name is Hannah, and I'm 38 years old. If you're listening to this, maybe you felt something like what I'm about to describe. That feeling of being touched when you didn't give permission. That sick twist in your stomach when someone laughs off their own behavior as just a joke. That quiet shame, not because you did anything wrong, but because someone decided your body was theirs to lean on, brush against, comment about. For a long time, I thought the safest thing to do was to stay silent. I was wrong. I work, well, I used to work, at a company called Harbor Point Logistics. It wasn't some giant corporation you see on the news, but it was big enough to feel cold and political and dangerous if you stepped on the wrong toes. I joined when I was 36, a little older than most of the women in my department, already carrying a divorce, a mortgage, and a mother with medical bills on my back. I didn't come there to make waves. I came to survive. My manager was a man named Evan Blake, 47 years old, married, 2 kids. Charming in that polished, practiced way. People called him friendly, relaxed, great with people. The kind of boss you'd have a beer with. Predators always hide best behind praise. The first day I met him, he shook my hand with a smile that stayed a little too long on my face. "You must be Hannah," he said. "You look much better than your resume photo." I laughed politely. At my age, I'd learned to file those comments away in the ignore and move on folder. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. Firm, maybe a bit too familiar, but nothing you could call out in front of HR. The second week, his hand found my shoulder again. By the third, it slid once, accidentally, along my back as he passed behind my chair. Then it became a habit, a hand on my shoulder when he walked by, a brief squeeze at my upper arm, a palm hovering much too low on my spine to be professional, all of it packaged inside jokes and compliments. "Looking sharp today, Hannah. Not many women your age stay this fit. Good for you. Hope your husband appreciates this view every morning." "I'm divorced," I said once, forcing a smile. He laughed. His loss. The first time I really felt my skin crawl was during a department meeting. I had spent half the night preparing our quarterly project report. I stood in front of the screen, walking everyone through the numbers, the timelines, the risks, the wins, all the things I was actually hired to do. When I finished, people clapped. Not loudly, but politely. I felt a little proud. Then Evan stepped beside me, and before I could step away, wrapped his arm across my back and pulled me closer, facing the room. "See?" he said. "This is what I mean when I say we can have women who are both smart and beautiful on the team." Laughter. A few playful whistles from the back. Someone said, "You're making the rest of us look bad, Hannah." But I couldn't hear much past the roaring in my ears. His hand rested just above my waist, fingers spreading as if he had the right to anchor himself there. I tried to slide away casually, but he held me for a heartbeat. Then 2, then 3, before finally letting go. I walked back to my seat, smiled, pretended nothing was wrong. That's what you learn to do, especially when you're older and you've seen what happens to women who make a fuss. After the meeting, a younger colleague leaned in and said, "Don't mind him, Hannah. That's just how he is. He's like that with all of us." That was supposed to make me feel better. It didn't. Over the next months, it got worse. He started standing too close when he talked to me. So close I could smell his cologne and coffee. He leaned over my chair so that his chest brushed my shoulder. His hand would rest on the back of my seat, trapping me in a half circle of his body and the desk. One day, as I typed, he bent so close to my ear that I flinched. "You work too hard," he murmured. "You should let yourself have a little fun." I pushed my chair forward to create space, laughing softly to keep the mood light. Inside, I felt like something was shrinking. I tried subtle ways of telling him to stop. I stepped away. I gave short answers. I avoided being alone with him as much as I could. But predators read silence as permission. And the worst part? Everyone saw it. No one did anything. It all reached a breaking point one night in the company parking lot. I had stayed late to finish a report. Ironically, one he had demanded urgently. Then left the office hours earlier, leaving me with the work. By the time I packed my bag, the building was almost empty. I walked out to the lot, the sky already dark, the streetlights casting long shadows. I got into my car, shut the door, and stayed there for a while, hands on the steering wheel, not starting the engine. I felt hollow, used, tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. I kept replaying little moments, his hand on my back, The way he called me sweetheart when no one else was around. That ridiculous, humiliating comment in the meeting. And then my mind turned on me. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you push him away in front of everyone? Why didn't you tell HR? My phone buzzed. I looked down. An unknown number, one sentence. Nice skirt today. Should wear that more often. A winking emoji followed. The blood drained from my face. I stared out at the lot through the windshield, half expecting to see a figure in the shadows watching me. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. Evan, I whispered to myself. Who else could it be? I didn't reply. My hands shook. I locked the doors, though I was already inside the car. For a moment, I thought I might cry or scream or drive straight home and never come back. Instead, something unexpected happened. The fear slid sideways inside me and revealed something beneath it. Anger. Not the kind that makes you throw things or shout. A colder anger. Quiet, sharp, solid. I sat up straighter. I read the text again. And I realized he thought I had no power. He thought nobody would believe me. He thought he was safe. That night, I went home, put my bag down, and took out an old notebook. At my kitchen table, I wrote down everything I could remember. Every time he touched me. Every comment. Every text. Every incident I'd brushed off to avoid drama. By the time dawn touched the curtains, the pages were full. It looked like the record of a crime spree, because that's what it was. Memory alone wouldn't save me, though. I needed evidence. Cold, undeniable evidence. The next morning, I propped my phone on a little stand on my desk, angled slightly so it faced the walkway behind me. To everyone else, it looked like I was using it for video calls or taking notes. In reality, it was recording. The first day, nothing much happened. A few colleagues passed by, a random conversation, the usual office noise. On the second, he appeared again. I watched the clip that night at home. There he was. Evan walking past my chair, letting his hand slide, just briefly, along the back of my shoulder. Not enough to be seen as grabbing, but clear enough to be no accident. The third day. He leaned over my shoulder, his hand on the back of my chair, his body too close, his voice low. Looking good today, Hannah. That color really suits you. I watched his fingers, how they curled around the top of my chair, how his body angle trapped mine. Not imagination, not just being friendly. Evidence. I saved each file, named them by date and time, backed them up in the cloud. After that, I started recording audio every time he came near. Evan, please don't touch my back, I said softly one afternoon while my phone lay on the desk, voice recorder running. Come on, Hannah, he replied, a bored smile in his tone. Don't be so dramatic. You know I'm just being friendly. Click, saved. Another day. Stop leaning over me like that. Hannah, relax. If I really wanted something from you, you'd know. Click, saved. One more. I don't like these comments. Most women would kill for this kind of attention. Don't you like compliments? Click, saved. He kept texting too. Beautiful dress today. Couldn't stop thinking about that smile. You looked tense in the meeting. Let me help you unwind sometime. The worst one arrived at 10:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Imagine if we had the office all to ourselves. I bet you'd loosen up. I sat there in bed, phone glowing in my hand, the room dark and silent around me. Then I took screenshots, printed them, backed them up. Slowly, I was building a case. But the final piece came on a stormy Wednesday. Most people left early that afternoon because of a storm warning. Rain pounded against the windows, and the sky outside turned the color of wet concrete. I stayed back to finish some printing, the usual urgent task that somehow always fell to me. I stood alone by the printer in the hallway, feeding pages into the tray, listening to the machine hum. Then I felt him before I saw him. Working late again. His voice came from behind me. I stiffened. He stepped closer, his reflection appearing beside mine in the glass of the frame notice board. You and I hardly get time alone, he said. I swallowed. I'm finishing the quarterly forms. He moved closer, so close I could feel his breath near my ear. You know, he murmured, if you just relaxed a little, you and I could get along very well. His hand lifted, reaching toward my waist. I stepped aside. Don't touch me, I said quietly. He laughed, soft and mocking. Everyone else here loves me, Hannah. You know that. No one's going to believe you if you start telling stories. You'll just look emotional. He leaned closer. And besides, he added, voice almost a whisper, you haven't said no before. I froze. In that moment, the fear snapped clean in two, because everything he was saying, his arrogance, his threats, his justification, was being recorded by my phone, which I'd set in the printer's document tray, camera, and microphone on. The next day, I transferred the files. I organized everything into folders. Video clips from my desk, audio recordings of our conversations, screenshots of his messages, a 27-page document listing dates, times, exact words, a transcript of what he'd said by the printer. I put it all on a USB drive. Then I made a second copy, which I left with a trusted friend. If anything happened to me, the truth would still be alive. On Monday morning, I did something he didn't expect. I messaged him. Hi, Evan. Do you have a few minutes today? I'd like to discuss the Taylor project. He replied right away. Of course. Come by my office at 3. Let's talk alone. Alone. He had no idea he'd just stepped into the trap. At 3 p.m., I walked down the corridor to his office. I could hear the murmur of phones, the distant clicking of keyboards, the familiar office buzz. My heart was steady, strangely calm. His door was half open. I knocked anyway. Come in, he called, then smiled when he saw me. Close the door behind you. I stepped inside and pulled the door almost closed, but not quite. I left a tiny gap, enough for sound to slip through if anyone happened to walk by. He sat behind his desk for a moment, then stood and walked around to the front, leaning on the edge right beside my chair. What's on your mind? He asked, folding his arms in a way that pulled his sleeves tight against his biceps. He knew exactly what he was doing. I placed a plain folder on his desk. I wanted to talk about the Taylor project. I began. He smiled, slow and condescending. You don't have to pretend with me, Hannah. You know I care about you more than just as an employee. I kept my face neutral. I don't want this kind of attention at work, I said. He chuckled. You say that, but your body language tells a different story. My jaw tightened. Evan, step back. He didn't. Instead, he softened his voice into that disgusting, coaxing tone he liked to use. You know, if you were nicer to me, I could make your life here very, very easy. Promotions, raises, better projects. I can take care of you. His hand rested on my shoulder again, fingers pressing lightly. There are a lot of women who would kill for that, he added. There it was. The offer, the proposition, the exchange of power for submission. And every word was being recorded by the tiny microphone clipped inside my blazer, the one he couldn't see, transmitting straight to my phone. I looked him in the eyes and said clearly, your comments and your touches make me uncomfortable. I've asked you to stop. He rolled his eyes. You're overreacting. Nobody is going to believe some little story you tell. I'm respected here. People love me. They know I'm a good guy. You complain, you'll only hurt yourself. He leaned in, lowering his voice even more. And besides, you've never really said no. That was it. The sentence that shattered his defense. I stood up. He straightened, confused. Where are you going? To HR, I said calmly. Right now. He grabbed my arm, panic flashing across his face for the first time since I'd known him. Hannah, wait. You don't understand. You'll ruin everything. This is a misunderstanding. We're just joking around. There's a microphone in my blazer, I said, pulling my arm free. It recorded everything you just said. For a moment, his mouth just opened and closed, no sound coming out. His face went white. Hannah, listen. Listen. If you go to HR, it will destroy my career, my family, my... Good, I said. And then I turned and walked out. The hallway felt different this time. Lighter, longer, like a tunnel with daylight at the end. I went straight to HR. The manager, Ms. Collins, looked up as I came in. Hi, Hannah. Did you have an appointment? No, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calm but full. I need to file a formal complaint about my manager. I have evidence. She blinked, then nodded slowly. Close the door, please. Let's sit down. I put the USB on her desk, then the printed screenshots, then the transcript, then my 27-page chronology. I have recordings, I said. Video and audio, multiple dates, multiple incidents, text messages, threats. An attempted proposition in his office 30 minutes ago. All time stamped. For the next 40 minutes, she listened. We played the clips. She read the messages. She heard him laugh, dismiss, threaten, and offer opportunities. She watched his hand slide along my back in the video, heard him say, "Nobody will believe you." By the end, her face had lost all professional neutrality. "Hannah," she said quietly, "this is very serious. We will open an immediate investigation. Effective today, you are not to report directly to him anymore. We'll reassign your projects. You will not have to meet him alone again. I want you to know you did the right thing coming forward." I nodded, but I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. I knew men like Evan. When cornered, they didn't fold politely. They fought. They lied. They twisted. HR called him in that same afternoon. I didn't see his face, but I heard whispers later. Someone in accounting said he walked into the HR office pale and walked out even paler. Someone else mentioned hearing raised voices through the wall, his angry tone, then a long silence. The next morning, an email went out. Effective immediately, Evan Blake has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. The office buzzed. People whispered, "What happened?" Must be some misunderstanding. He was always so nice. I can't imagine him doing anything wrong. They didn't know it was me. Not yet. A week later, another email came. Harbor Point took its reputation seriously. Once the evidence was reviewed, the decision was simple. He was terminated. Not for performance, not for restructuring, but for violation of company policies and code of conduct regarding harassment and abuse of power. My hands shook when I read that line. He tried to call me once after that. I let it ring, then changed my number. I heard through the grapevine that his wife found out everything. The texts, the recordings, the proposition. She left with the kids. His lawyer tried to threaten the company, but HR had my files, my testimony, my recordings, my backup. He didn't just fall. He imploded. You might think this is the part where I say I felt pure satisfaction, pure joy. The truth is more complicated. I felt relief. I felt safer. I felt proud of myself. But I also felt grief. For the years I'd stayed silent. For the younger version of me from long ago who hadn't had the courage or the knowledge or the tools to fight back in other situations. For all the women in that office who had laughed off his behavior and convinced themselves it was nothing. Because here's what I learned. It is never nothing. A hand on your back that you didn't ask for. A comment about your body in a place you came to work. A joke that makes you shrink inside. These are not harmless. They are warnings, signals, tests. Men like Evan push and push and push until someone pushes back. For a long time, I thought being older meant I just had to handle it. I told myself, I need this job. I'm too old to start a war. No one will believe me. But when I finally did speak, when I finally put the truth on the table, do you know what happened? The world didn't end. He lost his job. His mask fell off. The company had to look at itself in the mirror. And I stopped waking up every morning feeling like a coward in my own life. If you're listening to this and you're over 60 or 70 or any age where you think, I'm too old to start anything new, let me tell you something. You are never too old to start demanding respect. You are never too old to say, that's enough. Never too old to learn how to record, how to document, how to protect yourself with the tools this new world gives us. Never too old to go to HR, to call a lawyer, to tell your family, to say, I will not be treated this way. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's simply about refusing to let them keep what they stole from you. My revenge wasn't a dramatic scene in a movie. No one saw me flip a table or punch him in the face. There were no shouting matches in the lobby. My revenge was quieter. I watched. I documented. I prepared. I chose my moment. And when I struck, I did it with facts, not fury. He lost his job. He lost his reputation. He lost the comfort of believing no woman would ever dare challenge him. And I gained myself back. If you remember nothing else from my story, remember this. Silence protects the wrong person. You are not overreacting. You are not too sensitive. You are not imagining things when your whole body tells you something is wrong. Listen to that voice. Take notes. Keep screenshots. Record what you can. Tell someone you trust. And when you're ready, take the step that future you will be proud of. One day, you might be the voice another woman listens to when she needs courage, like you are listening to mine now.